Hey, Rick, you mentioned the redlining, and that comes from some tweets that were posted by Rich Orenberger, a former teammate of Tom Brady's in New England. Plus, and I know that we're not supposed to call out sources, but if you're going to drop something like that into the punch bowl, you open yourself up to people trying to connect dots. This guy is as tight can be with A.Q. Shipley, member of the coaching staff. At a minimum, I think, anybody with any sense of responsibility and propriety when it comes to putting something like that out there is at least going to say to A.Q. Shipley, let me know if I'm barking up the wrong tree here. How could you not take advantage of that resource? So even if he's not your source, how can you not take advantage of A.Q. Shipley's knowledge of the team and say, tell me if I'm wrong? I say all that because what was Bruce Arians' role in the offense? The way that Orenberger painted the picture, Leftwich and Brady are busting their asses all week. Bruce Arians barnstorms in, starts changing stuff. That would make me mad if I'm there at any workplace. If I'm there working all week and the semi-retired CEO shows up at the end of the week and tries to change everything, I'd be pissed off. It would get old very quickly. And I may love you and want to golf with you, but I don't want to work with you anymore. So what was Bruce Arians doing or not doing with the work that Leftwich and Tom Brady were doing together?
You know, Mike, I mean, he has the play sheet, and he wasn't in those meetings, so he has an opportunity to look at it late in the week. And there's no question that he could make changes. I talked to Bruce. I've never seen him more mad that when I've talked to him than he was after that story came out. He called and actually wanted to know, he says, I've let some of these go. There seems to be one every week. But this one really ticked me off. And he kind of went through the story and said, well, first of all, he says, I got treatment in my Achilles in the morning. I never get treatment in the morning, that sort of thing. So he was trying to debunk it line item. But at the end of the day, Bruce told me that he tends to add some things more than he takes them away. But it's still his team, right? And I think for the most part, he's going to defer to Tom, but he has a certain idea of the way things should go. And Byron works for him, and he is the head coach. So whether that was an annoyance, I would agree with you that A.Q. Shipley probably should keep his head down when Coach walks by. But I don't know that in a literal sense what was purported was exactly true. But there have been differences of opinion. We've seen from week to week, Mike, you can see the evolution of this offense. And all I know is that he won a Super Bowl. I would say one other thing. And that is your partner at NBC, Tony Dungy, did something very similar in terms of walking away. He came back to defend the Super Bowl. They didn't win it. Everybody was hyped up about running it back. And then he left, Peyton Manning, where I don't think there was any animosity between the two. But he left Peyton to Jim Caldwell and a Super Bowl ready team that did, in fact, win the AFC and went to the Super Bowl and lost. So this has happened before. And again, if you look at Bruce's makeup, I've asked him about the Hall of Fame. I think if he won another Super Bowl, he might be a shoo-in. Shereen would know more than I would. But I think at the end of the day, he looks at his legacy as being bigger than that. The inclusiveness that he's had on his staff, you look at the ability to hand something that's going to be successful as opposed to a year from now when Kyle Trask and whoever is battling out for a starting job. I think he really did want to set Todd Bowles up. I think it was a factor. How much, we may never know. But the history of his, coaching and such, I think reflects that.
Rick, what an offseason you have when you think back at the end of the season. Tom Brady retires, then he unretires, then Bruce Arians steps down, and you've gone through a lot, obviously, this offseason. I'm curious, and you kind of alluded to this in the last answer, but if Brady had stayed retired, would Arians still be the head coach of this team? Because he said he wanted to set Todd Bowles up to succeed. So would he have walked away next year and given Todd Bowles like a really crappy team and stayed on this year? Or how would that have played out if Tom Brady had stayed retired?
Boy, it's a great question. I mean, he talked a lot at the Combine about, wanting to do that, wanting to, have that competition. I mean, they were after Deshaun Watson, but he told me several times he didn't think that was ever going to happen here. I think ownership was not going to allow that to happen here. And I think for all the world, they were looking at, Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask battling it out. And in that instance, I don't think he wanted to hand that to Todd Bowles. At that, also, they had not re-signed those free agents. Remember, Tom coming back is how you got Ryan Jensen. It's how you got so many of these guys to re-up. I think they've signed 10 or 11 of their own free agents back, and Leonard Fournette included. So I think that was a big factor, that he didn't know what kind of team he was going to have, and he didn't want to turn it over at that time and say, I'm out. I had my Super Bowl. I had my run. Now you pick up the pieces and be a head coach that you always wanted to be, and he would fail. So this is with the best of all worlds as far as Bruce was concerned.
Last one for you, Rick. The talk before Tom Brady unretired was that at one point in the offseason, the Dolphins explored a package deal of Sean Payton and Tom Brady. The Dolphins admit that they contacted the Saints and inquired about the availability of Sean Payton after Payton had resigned. I mention that as the precursor to what's going to happen going forward. Tom Brady's contract has a no tag clause in it. So after this year, he's free and clear. He can go somewhere else next year. Do you think they give him a contract? Do you think he wants a contract that will go beyond this year? Or do you think this is it, and next year they would be in competition with 31 other teams in theory to try to convince him to play for them if he plays beyond this 2022 season?
Yeah, Mike, I could be wrong about this. I don't see a scenario where Tom Brady would link himself to this team another year contractually. One of the sound bites that everybody had from the Combine was Bruce Arians when he was asked if he would consider, if Brady came to him and said, I wanted to be placed somewhere else. He said, no, that's bad business. And he said, well, maybe for 5 first-round picks. Why would Tom Brady link himself to a team like that? He did it for salary cap reasons a year ago. He was always going to play 2 years here. He wanted to re-sign the guys back. They wanted to get all 22 starters and run it back, and they did that. But I read your reporting. I think it's solid. This is the most prepared athlete we've been around ever. You cannot convince me, as quickly as he retired at the end of the season, that Tom Brady didn't think he knew exactly what he was going to do. And something fell through, and you reported it. I don't know exactly if it was the Miami situation or Brian Flores was a factor or what, but certainly he was headed somewhere else to do something else, maybe not as a player, maybe as part of that ownership group, but it didn't happen. And I think that's why he came back and decided to play. The Bucs owned his rights. He knew he could get these players back and have a good football team, especially in the NFC South. Except for some bad calls by Todd Bowles, of all people, they might have played the San Francisco in the championship game and gone to the Super Bowl. So, that's a long way of saying that I do believe that Tom Brady will not be linked to the Bucs beyond this season. We'll wait and see what they do with the contract, but I don't think he's going to add another year.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.